presentation. I'd like to welcome Javier Pereda at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to be presenting is a project called Unlocking the Colonial Archive, and what I'm showing is the computational techniques we're using to unlock the actual vision, the actual narrative, and now cosmovision from machine learning. So first of all, the project is funded by the National Endowment from the Humanities in the United States and the AHRC, the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the United Kingdom, and it's a collaboration between University of Texas at Austin, Liverpool University, and Lancaster University, amongst other European, Mexican, and United States organizations. So first of all, this is a presentation from two core projects, digging into early colonial Mexico and unlocking the colonial archive, and the working towards reading that or unlocking the colonial archive. So what the presentation is going to be showcasing is that process of these 2.1 projects and the machine learning and computational technologies that we're using to engage with this content. So the data set that I'm presenting, that I'm going to be showcasing these technologies, is based on the Relaciones Geográficas of the New Spain, which is a data set almost to the size of big data, which is a questionnaire during the 15th and 16th century that was produced in between Mexico and Mesoamerica, Mexico and Guatemala, to understand what was happening in the villages in terms of political, social, economic, health. So that data set was asked by Felipe II in Spain, the Spanish kingdom, to understand what was happening in Mesoamerica. So these came up with thousands and thousands and thousands of places that were asking, responding to this questionnaire. So this is a combination of indigenous knowledge and European knowledge. So this is where it gets interesting, because on one hand, we have all these calligraphic and paleographic knowledge that was produced from the Spanish perspective, of course, combined with a lot of indigenous knowledge, as well as the Nahuatl base, as the Nahuatl language, which is pictographic. So we started having, with these documents are mixed with this Nahuatl-based language, as well as the European language, as in Spanish. So, for example, this page is a demand relating to the corregidor, which is kind of the person who was imposed by the government to regulate what was happening in the region. So this is Mixquiahuala, and this is a critique that the governor, that corregidor wasn't doing his job. So that kind of political work and economic work is registering this type of documents. So every kind of documentation that was requested, the Europeans, well, the Spanish kingdom, asked for a map. And this will start getting interesting, because what they were expecting to get was a European map. But then the Nahuatl cosmovision, the Mesoamerican cosmovision of space, time, and maps, well, it's actually not a map, it's a painting. We call them paintings, they're not even maps. So within the cosmovision of European context, doesn't make sense. So for us, who work with Mesoamerican context, all the technologies that we see are useless to understand these kind of technologies. So mapping or space as a technology. Moreover, what we have is also indigenous pictographic language. So we have no way of using it. Now we have, but we have no way of understanding how these Nahuatl-based languages can be integrated. So we have a combination in the Relaciones Geográficas of New Spain, a combination of Mesoamerican pre-colonial knowledge. Well, these are colonial documents, so we have Mesoamerican pre-colonial and colonial documents. But in this case, we have the pictographic language embedded in the maps, which also you can see there's no north. So this is painted from the center, and what we see here in Coatepec is the word similar to German languages, which are so it merges words by adding different components. So it's a combination of Coatl, which means serpent, Tepetl, which is hill or land. And that created the word Coatepec. And so what we start encountering is that now that we have that pictographic language, we also can use pre-Hispanic codices, which there's only around 20 pre-Hispanic codices Nahuatl-based alive. But there's over 500 colonial codices floating around in Europe and Mexico and different parts of the United States. So these documents were created by the tlahuilos, which means the person who communicates by writing in Nahuatl. And these were the people who specialized in different types of knowledge, and therefore the illustration or the oral communication and the pictographic communication of those different levels of specialty or types of specialties that were then embedded in the documents. So this is the complexity that we have in documents. So how do we embed them? How do we engage with them in a computational process? So the first thing is using the automatic transcription, where we have been able to analyze to automatically translate or make the documents machine readable, which means the computer can we can perform analysis on the document from all this paleographic content from Gótica, Procesal, Itálica Cursiva, and Itálica Redonda. So analyzing these thousands and thousands and thousands of documents will take a historian or a paleographer decades to engage with this kind of content, which now you can do it in a single click. Well, a single click, but it's less than a click. So then, once you have this content machine readable, then you can perform natural language processing and start understanding what is happening in the text. The text in isolation, the words in isolation are, need to be contextualized further. So we do text recognition, natural language processing, and automation of text search. And that allows us to engage with a lot of different computational processes. So all this content ends up in a system that we call the GTA, where we do geographic analysis on geographic information systems, corpus linguistic, natural language processing, and we embed everything into an information system. So all the knowledge that is coming from those codices or paintings is then embedded into a system where we can now perform searches and research. For example, the work that Carolina is doing. Now you can ask where in the places who is playing the actual the ball game or the pelota. So that wasn't able to be done before, and now you can use this kind of tool for doing this kind of work. So in this case, what we're showcasing is places where diseases or stories related to health are present. So in here we have places where diseases took place or were documented in the Relaciones Geográficas. So based on this analysis, now we have the first gazetteer, the largest gazetteer of Mesoamerican knowledge. We have now over 15,000 places identified and annotated in the document, which is accessible on Creative Commons, so you can actually access our GitHub, access the datasets, and start using them. So that gave us that proof of concept that this kind of work can be done. But there's still a lot of work to be carried out, because also we have this complexity on the layout. So we have all this process of the paleographic process in a pipeline that works. So we have that proof of concept, but the Mesoamerican pictographic documents are very complex, not only because of the complexity of the layout, but the way, the sequencing of how the position actually means something. And the iconography that is present. So we have a combination of Nahuatl, the base languages, and the Old Spanish, which is also, as a Spanish speaker, even understanding Old Spanish is quite difficult without even considering the paleographic knowledge. So I show you how we have these the Telereno references codex. This is a colonial codex. So the knowledge that we have here is hidden because we don't have the technology to actually embed it. So you have to be an expert to actually understand the pictographic language. So in here, what you can see, we have the symbol where it says earthquake, that symbol Ojin, and Tlali means land, and Olin means movement. So that means that's an earthquake. So what you have here is actually a simple magnitude system in the codices, which has also the dates. That's also the eye means is the sun. So when the eye is closed, that's the sun view. When it's closed, that means it's happened at night. When it's open, it happened at day. So there's a lot of information there that is just, these are just not pictures just floating around. These are words. This is the cosmovision that exists in Mesoamerican spaces. Especially these, I'm focusing mainly on Nahuatl-based documents. But in here, this is a perfect or a very interesting example of the meaning of the pictographic knowledge and the information that is contained there, which most of the Western technologies are useless in these kind of spaces. So you have probably heard a lot about machine learning, a lot about computer vision. So to uncover the knowledge that is hidden behind this iconographic content, we jump now into our located colonial archive, where we're now focusing more on uncovering the pictographic knowledge. And this is what we produce, this what we call visual natural language processing. So what you see everywhere is natural language processing, computer vision, but visual natural language processing doesn't exist because no one has actually worked on pictographic materials. So as we saw, these are not just drawings or illustrations. This is the cosmovision. This is the way we communicate. So there are different challenges when you try to deconstruct iconographic content. So we have on a first stage the pre-iconographical description, which is where you just describe things. So shapes, basic shapes, and then you have the iconographical description. So the vast majority of machine learning tools, of artificial intelligence, this is where they're great at. So this is something they're very good at. But then the next stage is this is where machine learning and artificial intelligence is pretty much useless. And that's what we're trying to now, develop. So what we need to get at, or what we're developing, is that iconographical interpretation. So that is the societal, the contextual and cultural meaning of things. And for that, you need the computer vision approaches, the artificial intelligence processes, the visual machine learning processes, as well as the ontological understanding, and it's both humans and machines. So what we're doing is now doing an automated identification of iconography. Especially, we're mainly focusing at the moment on toponyms, which is name places, which are pictographic, as well as anthroponyms, which is names of people, or for us, deities are people as well. So they're people's names. So the first thing is having that automatic recognition of the document, because remember, we're working with these very vast data sets, and it will take us decades to go icon by icon and tagging them. So what we do is then use computer vision and artificial intelligence to first map the toponyms or the iconography. So the key thing for us as well is to provide these annotations as open data. So we want to do this because we want people to understand how decision-making processes of our machine learning tools, of our artificial intelligence processes, are being made. So one of the issues that we have is that it's very difficult to see how the machine is making those processes. So then, once the information is annotated, we produce an ontology which has all the axioms and the understanding, the cosmovision. So the cosmovision is understood by both the machine and humans. So we have to create what is called a domain ontology, which is an ontology that allows us to explain from that cosmovision to a computer what things mean. The problem that we have also at the moment, especially, for example, with CRM, is that those ontologies and those data models are Western, white, and vastly Anglo-centric. So in here, we can see, for example, the example of Texcayan. The one is a toponym, which is a combination of Texcali, which means cliff, and Tlan, which is a locative Nahuatl-based term. So every time you see in Nahuatl or Mesoamerican language, you see Tlan, that means place of. And that's a very common explanation. So what we have now is we're building this artificial intelligence lab and aiming to the EDA, where we're now trying to figure out how do we get these technologies to the community. So at the moment, it's still very research-based and knowledge production, but still considering that in the Latin American perspective. So this is the whole pipeline that we have. So you have the automated translation to transcribers, then on digging for the colonial Mexico, and then on the colonial archive. The next phase that we have is bringing all these intangible characters. So, for example, what Carolina was presenting, how do we share this knowledge and how do we embed this practice-based knowledge into our pipelines? Because the last bit that we have is that these documents are live documents. These practices are live. These practices are actually performative. So, for example, this is the lienzo of Petlacala, which is actually placed in the hill of Xixtepetl. Well, Xixtepetl, just called Xixtepetl, and so in there they put the lienzo, which is the original one, to do petitions for rain. Also, on the top left, we can see that the Motorpot, they use it in ceremonies as well. So these are live documents that actually are performative. You use the document to actually recreate the events. So, for example, what they were saying about the Tayrona Beach and was the Tayrona Coast, these are spaces within the cosmovision that are live. So what we're trying to build now is this reintegration and reinsertion of these processes back into our pipelines. So you can see we have this lab that, of course, we are thinking of how we bring these different pipelines into the community. So we're integrating our work to the how the education system, the public system education in Mexico works through CONACYT and CIESAT, with Mexican repositories, institutional governments, co-design, and especially indigenous rights, more than fair principles, indigenous rights, and fair principles, but as well working with community organizations, working with city labs, especially groups like the Laboratorio Popular of Medios Libres, which are indigenous-based, technical-based labs. So, so they could be considered city labs, but they are actually community labs, we like to call them that, where all these artificial intelligence pipelines can be then facilitated and then bring them back. And the key thing is also co-design and participatory design, where we actually start creating indigenous technologies. Not technologies that happen to be used by indigenous groups, but indigenous technologies.